Stop sloganeering. Sloganeering kills people. Sloganeering destroys movements. Stop sloganeering. And let's go about the business of representing people and building hopes and aspirations for people.
A few moments later.
We're seeing protesters overcome the police. The police are now running back into the Capitol building.
Well, I think that we have some sympathizers in the Congress that probably ought not be there. It is time for us to come down off our high horse and admit that there is domestic terrorism in this country.
I'm sorry, Representative Clyburn, I couldn't hear you over the angry mob. There are a lot of people who just don't get it. Ah, but what a difference a day makes. Now, there's a lot of folks who have been saying, well, the coup attempt from January 6th just proves what we said. Donald Trump was far too dangerous to be president. Let me tell you something. These white supremacists who tried to overthrow the government, these guys have been at this long before Donald Trump was even born. And these guys are going to be at it long after he fades from the scene. Donald Trump simply gave a voice to what was already there. What a lot of folks don't like is the fact that they have to face up to the reality. There's a large number of people who have just been spoiling for the chance to try to usher in some Nazi American state. And Donald Trump simply told them, well, you know what? I'm not going to tell you go do it, but I will tell you I don't mind. And because black people have taken on the culture of deciding we're going to outsource our security to everyone else, which of course has left us with no security at all, there's a lot of black folks who don't want to have to face up to this reality. The reality that the white supremacists are on the march and you don't have the resources necessary to take them on. Now, we can change the situation, but black folks have also taken on a culture of deciding that we're going to be the bare minimum people. We will put out the bare minimum effort. We are going to try to see if we can have somebody else do something for us, and that ain't the business. It is moral and psychological cowardice that makes it where so many black people are hoping to themselves that once Donald Trump's gone, maybe things will cool off, maybe the white supremacists will calm down. But it is political cowardice on the part of these so-called black leaders, who the white media calls black leaders. Those are the ones that we're going to be discussing for this evening's video address. You just heard old Negro Jim Clyburn. Oh, he went from telling black folks, stop sloganizing cost people elections, stop it with this defund the police stuff, y'all gonna lose us elections. He went from that to, we gotta do something about these white supremacists and the police. They come together, we gotta do something about it. Oh yeah, now all of a sudden Jim Clyburn's changing his tune. Well, I think that we should stick to old Negro Jim Clyburn's original advice. Let's go about the business of representing people. Sure, you got Lauren Boebert, who is one of the two QAnon lunatics who's in Congress. She and that other one, Marjorie Greene, where the hell her name is, both of them love to be showing off those guns and said, oh, we're going to be coming to Capitol Hill with guns. Yeah, now you got a couple of unbuttoned lunatics who have decided that they want to carry pistols to Capitol Hill. Now Jim Clyburn's changed his tune. He ain't sitting there talking about, we need to go about the business of representing people and building hopes and aspirations for people. Yeah, except for some of those people that you're talking about, the only representation that they want is for themselves and none for black people. And as far as building hopes and aspirations, well, on January 6th, a lot of them showed that their hope is to topple the government and they aspire to see members of Congress dead. Now, Negro Jim Clyburn, that might not be his hopes and aspirations, but there's a lot of people out there apparently who it clearly is. Now you got Lauren Boebert and you got that Marjorie Greene woman, both of those two QAnon lunatics who now are members of Congress. And both of them, especially that Boebert woman, made it clear, I'm bringing my gun to Capitol Hill. Yeah, they know exactly what that means. Well, you got a member of Congress who's sitting here talking about how she doesn't like the government. The government's full of a bunch of rapists and commies and all the rest of it, and saying that she's bringing her gun to Congress. Yeah, that's taken as a thinly veiled rallying cry. But Negro Jim Clyburn, he's gone from sloganizing kills movements. He's changed his tune, and now all of a sudden it's, well, we need to be looking at members of Congress, and some of these people are a little bit unhinged. I mean, we need a little bit more scrutiny. Oh, so all of a sudden we need to be policing the police. We need to be looking at members of Congress. Oh, now it's a priority. You see, this is who white power likes to have as black people's representative, somebody who don't look out for anybody but himself. And for a lot of you black folks out there who think that having an idiot, having an asinine fool like Negro Jim Clyburn as your representative is cute, let me tell you something. Those fish fries that he would hold, you see what happened with those fish fries? He's not sitting there doing a damn thing about white supremacy. He's not fighting any sort of police brutality. All he's doing is looking out for himself. Yeah, that fish fry turned out to be the most expensive free meal in human history, now didn't it? And of course, old clueless Clyburn, he's not alone. The rest of the Congressional Bootlick Caucus, these clowns are trying to figure out how do they tap dance away from the issue. For decades, black people have been saying, and even the government had to admit, white supremacist violence was the single biggest national security threat to the United States. But people like Bill Maher and other talking heads on TV, they have their little fetish about Muslim extremism because it's a matter of every time you start talking about white nationalism, we got to change the subject. We got to get it on something else, someone else. And this is not merely a matter of, oh, they just don't see it. It's a matter of this is how white supremacy intends to keep its power. White supremacy will be talking civil and it will be talking moderately in front of you, but it always wants to make sure white supremacy rules through violence, through force. And white supremacy understands that. Now, through the white media, they'll put forward this phony front of, oh, it's all about talking and democracy, and we want to make sure that we deal with our problems with words and not weapons. But the problem is white supremacy understands full well that it did not get its position in the world through words. It got it through weapons. White supremacy understands that, and that it intends to keep its position through those exact same means. That is what has maintained the racial pecking order under white supremacy. The credible threat of violence. That's how white supremacy coerces obedience to its laws, no matter how contradictory they are, no matter how blatantly unconstitutional they are. White supremacy does not have to be consistent because white supremacy is not based on the words that it puts on a page. White supremacy is based on how its force is utilized. And when that force comes to bear, that's what white supremacy is actually based on. When black people said that many, if not most of the people in law enforcement in America are in fact white supremacists, we were told we were wrong. On the one hand, you had the white media saying, it's only a few bad apples. Yeah, no matter how many orchards full of bad apples we found, it's always just a few bad apples. And we're going to put the victims on trial and law enforcement do a dangerous job. And we're talking to the police chief, but we're not going to ask him how many black people he's killed. We're not going to ask him how many black people his officers have killed. We're not going to do any of that. So that's been what the white media has been putting out there for its anti-black propaganda. All of these black deaths at the hands of the police, these are nothing more than a bunch of bad coincidences, and it's obviously the result of poor training, and we're going to bring on some NAACP civil rights retreads, and we're going to also bring on some sexually suspect characters from some black folks who are on the white payroll, and they're going to say it's a training issue. No matter how many black people get killed and no matter how many white offenders who are using lethal force do not get killed, we'll just say that the black deaths are just a training issue. It's a training issue. So they need sensitivity training. Take them to the African American History Museum or something. But we're not punishing anyone. That's what the white media does. And then on the other hand, you have the bootlick representatives for us. Like on the one hand, you have black folks who claim to be for us, but they don't talk about punishing white supremacy. Instead, they talk about, it's a training issue. And on the other side of the black misleadership class, you got the Negro Jim Clyburn. Stop talking about it. Stop sloganizing. Stop saying defund the police. Don't be doing nothing about this. Don't you know I ain't through getting paid off by these white supremacists yet. My daughter, she needs some brand new shoes and some new teeth. And that's what's passed for a political discourse in the black community regarding the police. We've largely been on remote control. The white supremacists send their bootlicks among us so that they can have a remote control means of disrupting and otherwise trying to find a way to fracture our discourse. Every time we start talking about what needs to be done, when people start getting close to, oh, we need to have punishment for the police, then it becomes, oh, well, the white liberals ain't going to go along with that, and we got to be realistic and stop sloganizing. Sloganizing kills. Oh, yeah, and I'm sure these white supremacists with badges don't. Black people have been talking about what happened at the Capitol, all this gathering for the longest time. As long as you allow the white supremacists to take over entire institutions blatantly, and then you support and back them and make excuses for them and protect them, what's going to happen is you have normalized them using violence. So what happens the first time things don't go their way? They become capricious about the use of violence. They don't become more reserved or well thought out. They're not going to become more careful about it. They're going to become completely and thoroughly like a child with a shotgun because they never get punished. A spoiled brat with ballistic weaponry. So what happens the first time the government does something that displeases them? They decide, let's kill the government too. Because they've been conditioned by a white media, a white government, and a white so-called intellectual class who comes up with all sorts of pseudo-academic jargon to try to justify it. Well, if somebody who's classified as white does it, then it's not as bad as all that. This person, obviously they've got mental problems, or they've got affluenza, or they come up with some other term. This guy, he didn't get the right color bike for his birthday. And even if he did, well, you can't be, we don't want to be harsh, mind you. Pure cowardice. If anybody should be on a warpath against all this white privilege, it should be the Black Bootlick Caucus. But who chose the Black Bootlick Caucus? Who chose Ayanna Pressley? Who chose Negro Jim Clyburn? Who chose Cori Bush? Have you ever seen the white media trashing any of these clowns? No. You want to know why? Because that's how the white media builds credibility with them. We can't be sitting here undermining the Negro puppets who we're depending on to keep all them other little ex-slaves in check. The Black Bootlicks did not take on their white colleagues nor the white media, because that's not their job. Their job is to take on us. They are not supposed to be a check against white supremacy in the legislature or in the media. The job of the Black Bootlicks is to be a check against us. That's the reason why all they do is attack us. And you never hear them pointing out that in the media, you guys are wrong. You got to be stopped from saying this garbage, and we're going to check you on it, because that's not their job. Their job is to lend their voice to the white media's lies. The cowards in the Congressional Bootlick Caucus are not about to use their numbers to lean on Nancy Pelosi and demand that white supremacy be criminalized, or at the very least, that their white Democrat colleagues declare that they will give the feds every tool possible to go after these white extremists. They're not about to use their position to make it where punishing white extremists is on the front of the legislative agenda. They're not about to do that. When you see the phony white liberals who complain that, well, we have to be proportionate, we have to be careful when it comes to punishing these right, we're going to be careful about what tools we use to go after them because we could have a police state on our hands. That police state garbage ain't got a damn thing to do with black folks, because as black people in this country, we have always lived in a police state. Police in the United States came out of the slave patrols. Those were the first police departments. Black people's right to privacy, our freedom of speech, our very right to live has never been respected in this country. We've been the ones who, with COINTELPRO, you had the FBI and the CIA spying on black people. So when you hear white liberals and conservatives who are both mouthing the same gibberish, both in unison demanding that the feds, you got to be careful about letting the feds use their powers to surveil anyone or what kind of information they gather. Why, you're giving the government too much power to police us, you see. They're talking about white people. They ain't talking about black folks. They're talking about themselves. Whoa, you got the government deciding they're going to investigate us and they're going to actually try to put people in jail, and you're treating us like black people. Both the white left and the white right understand just how precarious their position becomes if it becomes normalized that they should be held to the same standard that black people have been held to. If the law treats them the same way it treats black people, they're like, well, hell, forget about white privilege. It's going to be just white folks are going to be locked up left, right, and center. So we got to stop that now before anyone starts thinking we're going to go in that direction. White supremacy is what I've always told you it is. It's a system of goodies, giveaways, and guarantees handed to those classified as white. And the first freedom that they have is immunity from law. That's the first guarantee the white supremacy is handed to those classified as white. The law doesn't apply to you. I mean, in order for something to actually be done, you got to do something totally off the wall. Other than that, you're getting a slap on the wrist. Full stop. Just take a look at how these violent insurrectionists who overran the Capitol are being treated. With kid gloves, you would think that a bunch of violent thugs, that the cops would be, and the FBI would be showing up, assault rifles at the ready. You would think that with these people having already shown that they can beat a cop to death and not give a damn, they injured dozens of police officers. And yet when you see how the sheriff's departments and the police departments and the FBI and the U.S. Marshals are treating these thugs, you notice how none of them has been beaten up. None of them has been accidentally shot resisting arrest. You would think that with the alleged over 200 arrests that they've made, you would think that just a few of them by sheer coincidence, just a matter of statistical error, that a few of them would have some sort of accidental fatality, that a few of these guys would put up some resistance to the point that the police would go, oh, had to shoot them, had to do something. You would think that, but they haven't. Which is actually par for the course of what happens with people classified as white normally under all circumstances. Now, black folks, on the other hand, if you're associated with Black Lives Matters or anything that even looks like it's fighting for black people to not be targets of white violence, well, there's going to be a few fatalities, you see. So-and-so was resisting arrest, don't you see? But these insurrectionists, they're being treated with kid gloves. These are traitors. And not only are the feds and local and county government treating them as though they did nothing, local and state law enforcement, they're doing the same thing too. All of them going out of their way to be as courteous as possible to a bunch of traitors. And that's not merely because a disproportionate number of law enforcement in this country are white supremacists. It's a matter of these institutions are set up to treat those classified as white with each and every courtesy possible. That's how they're set up. We want to make sure we're nice to these guys. And of course, when the white media reports on these traitors, they resort to the usual white media narrative. Suspect so-and-so is a human interest story. The white media has not made it a point to give us the rap sheets on these terrorists. You don't know anything about the criminal records of any of these insurrectionists, do you? I don't care if it's the guy with the Confederate flag or the guy with the Camp Auschwitz shirt or the guy who had his feet up on Nancy Pelosi's desk. They have gone out of their way to make sure, we'll talk about them getting arrested, but we're not going to tell you anything about them. For the few media outlets that actually gave one or two passing references to just oblique references, it's usually, so-and-so lived in their neighborhood and the neighbors said that such and such was very quiet, etc. Again, they're not saying anything that's derogatory about these terrorists. They're not saying anything that might be less than flattering about a bunch of insurrectionists who tried to topple the government. Because the white media understands what their job is. They understand what's really going on here. This isn't about overrunning the Capitol building. This is about maintaining and ensuring the stability, the internal stability of white supremacy amongst its various factions of white supremacists. See, black folks tell themselves that this is some sort of national security exercise at work. The white supremacists understand that this is actually an internal disagreement amongst the white supremacists that they need to handle themselves. They cannot do anything that's going to make it where there might be some sort of permanent fracture among the white supremacists. They know that if this mass treason gets punished and punished harshly, it can cause a real and irreparable break in the unity that the white supremacists desperately need. See, even now they're keeping their eye on the ball, and the ball happens to be black people. Got to make sure them niggers is kept in check. To punish these traitors for their treason, that would be to risk permanently damaging white supremacy's unity. And they're going to need that unity if they're going to keep white supremacy alive. If they're going to maintain and perpetuate white supremacy, you're going to need to make sure that there's no hard feelings. This is all history repeating itself. That's why in my last video essay, I repeated how after the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln was running around talking claptrap about with malice toward none. Because he understood, as he said, he did not believe in the equality of the races. He would see the superior position assigned to the white man. That's supposed to be your great liberator, and the mentality has not changed. Lyndon B. Johnson, a century later, he was not interested in crushing white supremacy. He was interested in making sure that we have some cosmetic, so-called policy changes, merely cosmetic changes that don't do anything, and white supremacy remains in place. 25 years before that, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when he talks about his greatest accomplishment was saving capitalism, what he really meant was it was saving the economic wherewithal of white supremacy. That's what FDR meant by saving capitalism. Because as TBA has said since time immemorial, the strength of white supremacy resides in the strength of its economy. So that's the reason why these terrorists are being treated all nice and they're going easy on them. They're already beginning now the process of trying to calm the waters. Let's go ahead. Let's see if we can get these guys to calm down. That way we can go ahead and make a devil's bargain with them so that we can get everybody to go back to playing nice. You see, the white authorities do not see this failed coup as an act of treason to be punished. They see it as a political problem to be contained and quietly, very quietly, dealt with. Black people believe in letting our disagreements and rivalries play out in public. We believe in making a show out of that stuff. When we disagree with each other, we believe in putting it on display. The white supremacists don't believe in that. We believe in allowing other people to be involved whenever we have disagreements with each other. We try to bring everybody into it so we can especially have our oppressors involved in all of our internal discussions. The white supremacists ain't letting black folks be a part of anything they're talking to each other about. Or when it comes to putting people in a position where they can actually punish the white supremacists, they're like, nah, this is for white people to decide and everybody else needs to butt out. We are not going to denigrate or disparage any of these traitors. We are certainly not going to give rise to a societal climate where there's going to be an expectation that these guys need to be punished and harsh. We're not trying to do that. We're trying to get everybody to say, okay, see, so-and-so got arrested. Nothing to see here. We're moving on. And don't ask about the charges. Oh, yeah. Don't ask about the charges. He got arrested. That's going to have to be enough. That's what they're conditioning the public for. They're already trying to set the expectation that, hey, so-and-so will do the mugshot routine, and that's going to be the end of it. Black people, largely because of black bootlicks, and by bootlicks, I'm talking about not just the Negro Jim Clyburns, not just the black politicians, but also these talking heads that you see and these trusted Negro, quote-unquote, intellectuals. These clowns who the white media has tried to credential as being somehow qualified to speak on issues regarding us. They're qualified to speak for us. This is what I mean by bootlicks. There's entire groups of individuals who fall under that heading, but you know what that means. These bootlicks, they've been instrumental in giving rise to dissension among our ranks, and we got to be on the lookout for that. Because they're the ones who encourage us to allow minor differences in opinion to become a reason to turn on each other. They encourage us to decide that we will turn our backs on each other. They encourage us to have a zero-sum game mentality when it comes to the smallest disagreements. The white supremacists, on the other hand, they believe in avoiding internal strife at all costs. This is about containing public opinion on this issue. This is about controlling public opinion on this issue. They're going to do everything that they can to make certain that white supremacy comes out of this undamaged, because that's potentially what could happen here. They see that, and they see people are pushing for it, and it's a matter of, nah, we got to contain that. Yeah, we know you expect for us to tear down white supremacy. Nah, we're not trying to do that. This is a mass political legal operation by the white media and the government to downplay this insurrection, to try to minimize this failed coup as best they can. If people in the public start saying there should be punishment, well, you know, there's just no legal ground. You say they're going to pull a Jeffrey Toobin on you. They're going to do exactly what they did when they were telling black people, oh, there's nothing we can do about the police killing you guys in the streets. Well, you see, the law's on their side, you see. It's the law, you see. Expect to be hearing that a lot. Well, there's really not ground to say that this is sedition, you know. Sure, these guys have been planning this for weeks, if not years, and they were trying to kill members of the government. That's not sedition, you know. A mass group of white supremacist terrorists who show up in D.C. suited and booted with guns and plastic ties and talking about we're going to be killing these politicians. That's not sedition, mind you, because it's white people doing it. Hence, it cannot be sedition. Hell, it can't even be a crime. The white extremists who stormed the Capitol, they want to make it clear they're unhappy about something. They feel being white isn't as valuable as they used to think it was. See, the white supremacists are, as I've taught you, they are ultra hypersensitive to anything that might even remotely resemble a diminution of their position in the world. They live every day in mortal fear of that. They are constantly in a state of hyperphobia about it. That black people might have two pennies to rub together, they live in mortal fear of it. And even if they don't see any evidence of it, it's a matter of, well, we better go ahead and bring these Negroes in for some abuse, just to make certain they understand we're on top of the situation. What's the situation? Your black behinds, that's the situation. That's the situation. We're going to make sure that you guys don't get any ideas that you're not going to be oppressed. That's what you saw January 6th. The insecurities of the previous 12 years had boiled over. You see, that's what they mean by we didn't lose this election. What it means is we have not lost our position. Our position as being superior in the society. We haven't lost it. No election will be allowed to change that. They want assurances that their white privilege is just as valid and just as assured and just as unassailable today as it has ever been. They've seen the enforcement arm of white supremacy go from being merely criticized to being punished. And they've seen the conversation change, and they see that they had no part in that. They were helpless to stop it. And they understand that if the individuals who they have given carte blanche to kill with impunity, if these guys can be cut off at the knees, if the ability of the police to kill with impunity can go from being unquestioned to being revoked, no matter how many phony baloney legal cases and legal precedents are allegedly supposed to undergird that principle, no matter how many laws allegedly allow them to kill with impunity, no matter how many politicians make it clear we back the badge, no matter how many asinine executive orders get written. Yeah, I'm looking at Obama and that damn blue alert executive order, which did nothing, but it was him basically bending over and grabbing the ankles for the police unions in the desperate hope that this would give Hillary Clinton a few more police votes. It didn't, but you see how he was willing to throw black people not under the bus, but throw us in a mass grave if that was going to help him be able to brag and say, see, I have successfully handed the keys to the White House off to another Democrat, and 12 years of continuous one-party rule hasn't happened since Reagan, but it happened under me, and that's all that matters. That's what Obama was willing to do. And the white supremacists understand that if the police, who they have poured the most concrete into the foundation of lies that the police have every legal right to kill with impunity and cannot be punished, if that gets revoked, then what possible hope do the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and the Boogaloo Boys and the 3%ers and Adam Waffen and the rest of the assorted trash? These guys depend on the foundational idea that, well, if a white man has a badge, that means he can kill with impunity. And that's the reason why you find so many police who are members of or otherwise palling around with and mobbed up with these white supremacist groups. That's the reason why I put out the video essays talking about the regular and irregular forces of white supremacy. Oh, the white media is trying to pretend like, oh, we had no idea that there were so many police who were running around with these insurrectionists. There's at least 13 that they're willing to admit to. But we know the number is far, far higher than that. But black people have known this all along. And what's happening here is there's a lot of fear and uncertainty going on now, and there should be. Without the thugs in blue able to use violence against black people at will, they're terrified that the racial pyramid's going to begin to collapse. Because they see the black empowerment, the black grassroots are starting to shake things up. They need to have unrestrained violence in order to keep us in check and make it clear nothing's going to be changing. You guys can agitate all you want. Nothing's going to change. They want to know that black people's position in this society is going to remain fixed where white supremacy has put us, at the bottom. They want to make sure that we don't get any ideas that we're going to change things. For half a millennium, being classified as white has been a ticket to ride. And they're terrified now that their ticket, at long last, is going to be revoked. So the white political leadership will give them the assurance that they're looking for. All those white supremacists who converged on the Capitol, what they were saying was that was actually a call for help. That was a plea for help. What they were saying was, hey, you better look at the position that we're in here. You're undermining our ability to keep these niggers in check. So the political leadership's going to give them the assurances that they've been hoping for. That's what's going on right now behind closed doors. And this reassurance that's meant to help seal up and fix some of these fractures. See, when the white media talks about, we need healing, what they're really saying is that the white supremacy, the white community has fractured and they need healing. They need healing, which means we got to reconcile some of these differences that we've had between the rich whites at the top and the working class, lower classes at the bottom. When they talk about healing, that's what they mean. And this healing is going to take the form of a political agreement. How do I know this? Because it's happened before. What they are plotting is nothing more than a 21st century version of the Compromise of 1877 all over again. The white political leadership will assure these white extremists that the racial dynamic has not and will not change at all. And hey, if you guys knock off some of all this misbehavior, what's going to happen is there's going to be some economic crumbs in it for you to help keep you pacified. Don't worry, your tangibles are going to be augmented a little bit. So we can go ahead and get you guys to simmer down some. And just to make sure that you feel assured that black people aren't going to get any ideas that they won't be oppressed, we're going to make sure black folks get the message loudly and clearly that the white supremacists with or without a badge can kill black people at will. They can vent their anger on us, that they've got a license to kill black people. And we're going to make sure that, just like under Obama, they were allowed to do so. You better believe that Kamala Harris will be the first one out there saying, if there was some effort to kill black people, I'm in the White House and I would never allow that to happen. And you can be assured there's not. I wouldn't allow such a thing to be. And of course, right along with her, you'll have Jim Crow Joe Biden saying, I've been helping black people out. No one's done more for black people than me. And if you don't believe that, then you ain't black. And that's what's going to happen. You're going to have Kamala Harris trying to pretend that, I would never lie because the media says I'm a black woman. And Joe Biden saying, you niggers need to listen to me and you better listen to me or else. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be belligerence and it's going to be lies, but what it will not be is punishing the white supremacists. That it will not be. So understand this media legal theater that's going on right now. The subject here is not going to be the white extremists being punished. It's going to be a matter of getting you to think that something is being done about all of this. That's what they're actually trying to do. They're trying to give you the false sense of security that something's being done. But when you look at the freaking charges and when you look at the conversation revolving around what kind of charges there should be, all you see are nothing more than trespassing charges. And you're hearing the usual old saw about how, we just can't get them on anything. It's extremely difficult to prove, don't you know? Yeah, whenever the offender is not black, it's always difficult to prove and the chances are very low. If it's a black person, you can accuse a 5-year-old black child of having committed the Kennedy assassination. And while we're on the subject of broad-based lies, do not let any white liberals who are pretending as if they're going to finally admit, what happened on January 6th, that attempted coup was all about race. Do not allow them to change the subject, because you know that every single one of these so-called white liberals who shows up talking about it, when they say race, they immediately pivot to class. They'll say, oh, there are factors of race involved, but it's mostly about class, you see. This is about class. It's all about economic factors. It's about economic factors, don't you see? There's a lot of people who have lost their businesses, and they're very angry, and man, these fools up here. Timothy McVeigh, did he lose a business to COVID-19 shutdowns? Is that what happened with the Oklahoma City bombing? Hey, how about that white guy who decided to go to the Holocaust Museum and shoot the place up? Was that because of COVID-19 shutdowns? Hey, how about the murder of George Floyd? Was that because of any COVID-19 shutdowns? Did Derek Chauvin lose his job? Was he angry because he lost his job or something? Ray Tensing, he murdered a black man in Cincinnati and he had on a Confederate flag t-shirt underneath his uniform. Did he do that because he had lost his job or something? Don't let these white liberals come along and try to tell you that garbage. The economy is itself a manifestation of race in this country. White liberals are part of the controlled opposition that white supremacy uses to deceive us and try to get us to sit on our hands because, hey, we're just so eager to have someone from the dominant society who will admit that racism exists. But when it comes time to talk about the solutions, they go to the same old broad-based, lukewarm nonsense that changes absolutely nothing. Discussions about class have absolutely no place in any conversation about black people. Class is a perennial obsession for white liberals because class is the factor that separates and divides white people. That's the issue that white people argue about, but class is irrelevant to us. You look at those white supremacists who stormed the Capitol, and you see all strata there. You got corporate CEOs who were there. You got state representatives who were there. You got active duty police who were there. You got retirees who were there. When you got a freaking lieutenant colonel in the Air Force who shows up, that's not somebody who's down and out, okay, stupid? You have the sons of Superior Court judges who were there. You got people who are doing very well in life, upper middle class people who were there. These are not people who have fallen on hard times. A few of them might have, most likely through their own devices, have done so, but most of the people who were there, you had people who were gainfully employed, people who ran companies. So get off it with the white liberal shtick about, oh, this has something to do with the economy and COVID shutdowns and it's the economy, stupid. That's what it's really about. Give me a break. Their job is to get the conversation off of what it is and say this was not a white supremacist uprising. They're trying to already pivot to that this was not a gang of white supremacists who took over the government for a couple of hours. Instead, this is some angry people mad about the economy. And, if Joe Biden does something about that COVID thing and we can start opening up the economy again, why, that we can go ahead and credit him with putting down the rebellion. That's what that's what they're trying to set the stage for. To say that, oh, this whole issue, we know what you thought you saw. You thought you saw a bunch of white supremacists who took over the government for a couple of hours, but what you actually saw was a bunch of angry people mad about the economy. That's what it is. It's economic factors that exacerbated this, and we got to deal with that. Don't worry about that white supremacy thing, All we got to do is make sure that more and more people, preferably white people, are taken care of economically, and that pesky white supremacist thing will go away. This is what you have the white media and members of the white government, white academics telling themselves. This is the to them, sweet sounding lie that they're going to cling to. That the white supremacists trying to overthrow the government and successfully overrunning the Capitol, that, well, we can dispense with all this without actually having to punish the white supremacists, without having to dismantle white supremacy, without having to destroy it. We can go ahead and find some workaround. We'll throw them a few bucks and tell them, we'll see if that calms them down. Because while there may be very much a disagreement among white people on whether or not they like Trump, all of them agree that they need white supremacy because white supremacy is what has assigned them their place in the society. And so, doesn't matter if it's the political left or the political right, doesn't matter if it's Republicans or Democrats. What matters is white supremacy provides them with every crumb of their daily bread, hence white supremacy must be maintained. That's not even an argument. That's just a fait accompli. It's just a fact of life for them, or rather a fact of death. But please don't go letting any of these white leftists start doing the pivot and start trying to deflect and distract and detour us off into a class conversation. Class ain't got a damn thing to do with it. That motley crew of degenerates who stormed the Capitol, you had a whole bunch of folk, just a cross section of people who are gainfully employed, employers, whole 9 yards, government officials. I like to know, the people who are legislators and such, what the hell was their reason for storming the Capitol? What the hell was their reason for trying to overthrow the government? You got people whose job is to be state representatives representing the people. And here they are. Am I supposed to believe that I'm a state representative? I don't have a voice. No, the problem is not that the white supremacists don't have a voice. The problem is there are other people now, the black grassroots to be specific, who are speaking. And speaking in a voice loud enough to be heard. This is not about whether or not they have a voice. This is about whether or not their voice is obeyed without question. And to see the black grassroots able to inflict our will on the dominant society, or at the very least able to punish the thugs in blue and able to do it in a way where they were not able to save them, that shook them to their core. They need a reassurance that, hey, the world is still flat. Nothing has changed. These Negroes, they don't have any power. Nobody's listening to them, right? Right? So they're going to be trying to get some white liberals to detour the conversation to class. Oh, they're going to have a couple of bootlick Negroes out there trying to see if they can help them sell the soap on that one. But the only black people who you see saying that class is the core issue in America, that's only black people who are dependent on white institutions. Usually the white media, but mostly colleges and universities too. Black folks who are depending on this or that white institution for their daily bread, those are the only ones who get out there talking that claptrap. It's no coincidence that it's usually black people who identify as feminists or LGBT or immigrants or intersectionalists who white liberal organizations have as their front Negroes, their little mouthpieces trying to push that line. They use black front people for two reasons. First, to try to convince us that black people recognize that class is our most important problem, and hopefully if we see a few black faces saying that garbage, hopefully the rest of these Negroes will be simple-minded enough to fall for it. Hasn't happened yet, at least not with enough of us. But the second reason that these white front, leftist front groups like to have black Negroes saying that garbage is to condition the dominant society that black people don't truly think that race is the predominant issue, the predominant problem that we face. Oh, the dominant society loves the idea of not having to face up to the cardinal sin and the fact that they benefit from it because they perpetuate it. So what they need is some black people who will help to give some plausible deniability to that. We don't think that race is the biggest problem facing you niggers. Well, why is that? Well, we got Jonathan Capehart over here, and we got Charles Blow over here, and on the right we got Juan Williams and some other handkerchief-headed Negroes on Fox News saying it. And, you know, they all seem to say the same thing, that this is a class issue with you niggers, and that being the case, we think... I saw some black folks on television who said it, and that's true, you know. We suspected it wasn't race. We suspected it was class. Your issue was class, buddy. So if you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and if you just work hard, why America works for everyone, and if it doesn't work for you, it must be your fault. That's the reason why they got those guys out there saying that class garbage. This way, you got white leftists and white right-wingers who can tell themselves and tell us that race isn't that big a problem because, after all, they saw a few black immigrant feminist LGBT intersectionalists who were on TV or on the internet saying that it was actually all about class and not about race. And of course, because white supremacy believes in credentializing its bootlicks, the front Negro in question will be a professor, they'll work for a university, or they'll be a member of Congress, or they'll be a member of some alleged civil rights group, who of course the white media will never mention gets their funding from white donors, or it's going to be some black person who works for a think tank or who works for some white publication. Something meant to lend an air of authority or authenticity to whatever claptrap the chosen black bootlick might be spouting at the moment. But I need my people to recognize what's happening here. This is not media coverage that you're seeing. This is a media cover-up. Already they've been trying to say that there was some black immigrant, some Arab, because he's not really black. He describes himself as an Arab, this Ali Alexander creep, whoever this clown is, who's supposed to, this guy claims that he's the one who put together the Stop the Steal thing. And he also, well, he did finger a couple of GOP congressmen and say, hey, they were in there with me. So, I can't exactly hate the fact that he's dry snitching on some of these white supremacists. That's fine, but he's not doing it to help us. Though I do find it amusing that his ego got the better of him. He's like, yeah, there's some congressmen who will help me do it too. See, I'm important. You guys need me. See how important I am? You got these clowns clout chasing. Bootlicks can always be, of no matter what end of the spectrum they fall in, whether it's the left, the right, or the middle, these clowns can always be counted on to clout chase, because for them it's all about getting some money for being the Negro bootlick for this or that white front group. That's what they're in it for. But understand the fact that because this was unquestionably, undeniably a white supremacist insurrection that took place on the 6th, they don't have the ability to deny what it was. So they're not going to. Instead, what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, well, here these guys are. Ooh, look, there have been arrests made. Don't ask what the charges are, by the way. All that matters is they got arrested. And, this is actually about more than just race, There's also class elements involved as well. Not all of the traitors who took Capitol Hill are white supremacists, even though basically all of them ascribe to white supremacist ideology. Well, it's a lot more complex than that, and we have to see the big picture, the big picture. And the big picture is that there's a number of factors and forces that came into play here. Well, if race was only a small part of it, and truth be told, it wasn't like they were lynching black people in front of the Capitol. They were looking for Mike Pence, don't you know? And this is actually about economics, and it's about class. And we don't want to be too harsh because we don't want hard feelings, and we've got to heal. The country must heal, and we need unity and to bring people back together again, and that's important, healing and bringing people together.
And let's go about the business of representing people and building hopes and aspirations for people.